All right, guys. So we're going to cover this Antioch shooting, and we're going to talk about maybe what radicalized him. They're going to talk about his manifesto here.
We have a black kid expressing white supremacist ideas. Have you ever seen that before?
Uncle
This
Ruckus.
wouldn't be the first time that a person of color shackled themselves to a white supremacist movement.
We all know at
In
least
my
one, right?
experience as a
She
researcher,
might
this
show up
is
later.
one of the most extreme cases I've ever seen of it.
Jerry Tolt's job is to track hate and extremism, a skill set that in the hours after the Antioch High School shooting came into play, thanks to a 51-page manifesto left behind by shooter Solomon Henderson, seen here wearing a T-shirt for a neo-Nazi band. The manifesto, with the title "We Cannot Show on Television," declared, "The West has fallen. Billions must die. Accelerate, accelerate, accelerate." Words that Holt says represent the worst of the world of hate.
These are communities that encourage not only mass murder and genocidal fantasies, but also destruction of things like critical infrastructure.
So they're talking about bringing about the collapse of society and then creating their own utopia.
Essentially, yeah. They do not believe that democratic government
Sounds like John Galton in Atlas Shrugged. If you haven't seen Atlas Shrugged, go check that out.
will ever get them the kind of ethnic superiority or ethnic dominance that they want.
Included in the manifesto are some anti-Semitic claims made by the Goyim Defense League, the group we confronted last summer when they created a scene on the streets of Nashville. Holt cautions against reading too much into that, at least for now.
One way or another, this shooter came across this flyer and recognized it as something he thought might be great to include in his manifesto.
Then there are the manifesto's claims that Henderson was radicalized by conservative commentator Candace Owens, which Holt says appears to have been lifted from a notorious mass murderer's own manifesto.
The line about Candace Owens radicalizing him is very lightly modified copy and paste from the Christchurch manifesto.
Holt says all this suggests that Henderson may have ventured into some of the darkest parts of the internet where hate and murder are glorified, only to have lost his way out.
So then the question is, where does the responsibility lie? Of course it lies in the hands of the boy who shot and killed the girl and grazed the other boy, then killed himself. But is there responsibility of people online, people on the news, to speak in certain ways, to not push for, if you guys have heard the term stochastic terrorism, like pushing white supremacist values and whatnot. Like, we'll go out. So what we're going to do is we're going to look into that just a little bit more. So now we're going to get Candace Owens' views. This is a different shooting. I think this is like 4 months ago. But in the U.S., it's hard to keep up with all these shootings. So.
Okay. And so it turns out that Colt Gray's parents were not the best examples in his life. They were going through a very bitter separation and a custody battle. And the family had been on the radar of the police department and the Family and Children's Services Department. The GBI said at a press conference, it's understood that the teenager was living with his father during the split, and it was a nasty one, as I said. His maternal grandfather told CNN that the boy had lived in an environment that was hostile, that his dad beat up on him. And he said, quote, "I'm not just talking about physical, but screaming and hollering, and he did the same thing to my daughter."
So she's talking about mental abuse, saying things, using words to hurt somebody's mental state, and actually for possibly to cause a shooting.
That would be Colt's mother. So he was growing up in a household that was abusive, a lot of screaming. And then he says there was also drug and alcohol problems. And it turns out that that is true, that Colt Gray's mother, Marcy Gray, had been arrested multiple times. We're showing you right now a picture of her. Instantly, when you see somebody that is being arrested and they're smiling in their mugshot, there's a lot of conclusions that can instantly be drawn from that. She had been arrested multiple times and had been accused of drug offenses. She'd also done a stint in rehab. So we're talking about somebody that's dealing with addiction. Again, not a stable household, which always seems to be the environment that fosters
Not a stable household, not a stable woman to listen to.
this sort of behavior.
Comparisons, y'all.
But what's interesting is that authorities have made a move to charge his father, Colin Gray. Again, now this guy's 54 years old, and he's being charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children.
I wonder what she's going to think
And
about this.
they're saying that the reason they're charging him is because he's the one that allowed his son to possess a weapon. Apparently,
So, yes,
Dad is the one that brought Colt the semi-automatic weapon as a Christmas present.
So yes, that is an awful thing. You should not buy a kid a gun that they're not supposed to have, and especially if you're abusing that kid, you shouldn't be abusing kids whether you buy them guns or not.
And the dad's saying, well, that was just for hunting. 14-year-olds, just so you know, I know we got the crowd that's like, we just need stricter laws by all measures and all laws. A 14-year-old is not supposed to possess a weapon. So his father buying him this, of course, is already breaking the law. His father allowing him to take that gun to school or not knowing that he took that gun to school is already breaking the law. So what do you think? Is it fair that he's being charged? And I'll show you again, that is him as he is at his arraignment. You can see he's rocking back and forth. The father is deeply upset. And I think at some point it was reported that he was crying during this. And I guess some people feel bad for him. But actually, this works for me. This is exactly how it should be, because
Works
as
for
a
her.
parent,
Exactly how it should
you
be.
have responsibility over your children. I know that
As a parent, you have responsibility over your children. As a commentator, do you have responsibility of what you say to your audience? A little bit of responsibility over your audience. If you're a commentator that has a huge audience and you know that people are going to do stuff based on what you say, do you bear any responsibility to say things in a certain way?
it seems like such a foreign concept,
Oh,
like
I know.
crazy concept now,
Crazy concept.
that we're living in this over-liberal environment where people just think, oh, well, kids are their own entity, and if they're 4 years old and they decide that they want to be a fish, you just got to let them keep
And so her, Ben Shapiro, and a lot of these right-wing commentators have really young audiences, obviously probably not 4 and 5 years old, but very influential, or like what is malleable audiences, like from their early teens to 20s, 30s. They have very young audiences that are influenced, right? They influence them a lot.
swimming in the bathtub and never come out if they say that they're a mermaid. I know we're living in that sort of a mental environment in America, or at least we're fostering that sort of mental environment. But the reality is that you're in charge of your kids. You are in charge of your children.
Now, I wouldn't say that she's in charge of her audience, but she is in charge of what she says to her audience, and she knows that she's going to influence her audience to do at least some things. Like you want to influence your audience to be healthier, right? You want to influence them to go to work out and stuff like that, eat better and stuff. And I'm sure she says stuff like that sometimes, right? We all say little things like that, because if you watch me or you watch anybody and you like them, you're going to listen to them a little bit. That's why you're watching or listening, right? So she knows she has influence.
Children, okay? You should know whether or not your children are fostering violent thoughts. And beyond that,
And then too, she gives her audience violent thoughts. She doesn't need to know whether they are or not. She gives them to them. The way she talks about black people, and we'll go over that a little bit.
authorities pay you a visit and tell you, hey, your child has been posting online about wanting to shoot up a school.
And then there's that whole thing with Tucker Carlson. I looked for it, it's hard to find. But he had that whole rant about stochastic terrorism and how he didn't believe in it and stuff like that. And like, you guys know what you're saying. You know that you're going to foster, or that you're going to make some people angry, and people get angry and want to act on it. You know this.
Maybe don't get him a gun for Christmas.
Maybe don't talk all that shit.
And
right?
so you have a situation that I actually very much agree with. And I could imagine how that would ricochet if kids understood that their actions could be blamed on their parents. I'm talking even a 16-year-old.
Now, I wouldn't say that you could really do a lot other than, I don't know, maybe try to encourage people not to watch your channel. You want to educate people about her ignorance. But like, just because somebody goes and shoots a school up, and writes that, oh, I was watching Candace Owens and Candace Owens radicalized me. I don't think you could really start putting people in jail for that, because she doesn't actually know the dude, and she couldn't know to help him stop or whatever. But like, she wants to hold the parents responsible that are leading him in ways. She's leading people in
They're
ways.
caught drunk driving, and the police say your mom and dad are going to have to spend 30 days in jail. It would rot the children inside and out. You know, it's this idea, this perceived idea of freedom and separation from the parents that I'm not comfortable with. So I'm okay with this. I'm actually very much okay with this. But I find it quite odd, though, right? And I'm, again, never would blame the manufacturer of the gun.
You never would blame the manufacturer of the gun. She is the manufacturer of the stochastic terrorism, right? You don't blame the manufacturer. That's beautiful, Candace. That's beautiful.
Because see, Candace, you have trashed black people. You have denigrated black people. You have called us victims. You have danced before white conservatives. And you enjoyed your time on that stage, vilifying black people, trashing black people left and right. And now you actually want to come back and have conversations with black people. And you want us to accept that. You want us to forget all of the things that you said.
That was Roland Martin with some words for Candace Owens. And here's the African Diaspora News Channel talking with a similar thought.
And I think when Candace Owens was starting, along the years, it's just gotten deeper and darker and deeper and darker. And that just goes to prove the point that I was talking about, borrowed whiteness or white approval or white acceptance. There is a group of black people.
So remember, the shooter hated himself because he was black, and he was a black white supremacist. So this speaks to that.
That are so desperate to be white, to be looked at as white, to be treated with white privilege, and to be accepted in white circles. And it doesn't come cheap, and it doesn't come free. And I think that explains why Candace Owens' content just kept getting deeper and darker the more she went by. It's almost as if every single time she went on air, she had to come up with something more and more bizarre against black people. The attacks had to get more and more personal as the days go by, because that is the credit that she needs to buy her place in those white circles that she was so desperate to be in. And I began seeing.
So she wants to be in those circles, and she's willing to sell her soul, right? She's willing to sell herself. And as she does that, she infects or affects other people, like the shooter the other day. And so he referenced her, and he didn't like being black, right? So he followed her message of black is bad and all that stuff, and it ended up to him killing people. Now, do I think Candace Owens should be held accountable? I don't know. Like, I think that I don't think she should be in jail. I don't think she should have her right to speak taken away. But I mean, I think she should be called out. I think people should be aware of her. And like, it's a hard thing, right? Because I don't know. It's a really hard thing. I think that if nothing else, people need to call her out. People need to talk about it, and we need to educate people from the left and from a people are worthy standpoint. Like, everybody's worthy. All these others and all this, oh, well, you don't belong, you don't belong, you don't belong, you don't deserve to be here, you need to be over there. That's not good for anybody. America, the U.S. was supposed to be a melting pot. Like, let's do the melting thing. Let's stop this hate, man. Like, I don't know, this is just stupid. But anyway, you can tell Candace Owens definitely does not get her news from across the spectrum.